One.
Good evening. Masculinity is part of the social fabric, and it's very rewarding for men, but it's been demonized. For the past 30 years or so, academics and activists have done everything to bring their male extinction fantasy to life. They have pushed the idea that masculinity is toxic. Their goal to feminize the Western world has been incredibly successful. Just look at the results of the elections last night. I only began to grapple with how toxic it's been when I started writing a column for Playboy back in 2015. I would receive brutally honest and surprisingly vulnerable messages from men who felt under siege. They told me about the mixed messages they were getting from the culture. Men need to shut up. Masculinity, all of it, is toxic. And yet, men also need to open up and share their emotions. Stop holding it all in. Some men would tell me they didn't even feel like they could open up to their wives and share their emotions. And in fact, when they did, sometimes the wives would call them weak or they would regret it or use it against them. I always assumed, incorrectly, that men had it easier than women. That assumption was so very, very wrong. Tonight, we're going to talk about men and masculinity with my guest, Adam Coleman, and with all of you. This is Real America with me, Bridget Phetasy. Over the years, what I've observed about masculinity, true masculinity, is that their struggles are largely silent. Most men are quiet about it. They don't ask for help often when they need it. They don't need validation either. Maybe every 5 years or so, someone gets them some socks or a pie. They let results speak for them. I think a lot of men exhibit protection and provision quietly without acknowledgement, and they're okay with that. I feel like if you're truly strong, you don't need to flaunt it. Same with wealth. I think masculinity is about being able to be the bad guy for the right reasons, taking the heat with clarity and conviction. Over the years, various feminists and professors in fever dreams have imagined a world without men, a utopia where lesbians guide the braless female masses in an endless parade of Subarus, a world without war, needless competition, without violence and sexual harassment, free of male energy. Women could finally live in peace. Without the patriarchy, who could stop us? It would be a communal world grounded in cooperation, acceptance, tolerance, and emotional complexity, where every decision is carefully considered and everyone is calm. We all know this is not true, but it would be a life without male chauvinist pigs. But none of this would work. First of all, women are very catty and they would destroy each other behind closed doors. Secondly, it's an insane thought experiment. The human race would vanish without men. Aggression would vanish too. And without that tension, there would be no progress. Masculinity, I love it. It's disruptive. It's loud. It's human. It's the jet fuel of men's impulse to explore the earth and then the ocean and then up into space. This insanity is what keeps us all alive. It's why we have planes and computers and air conditioning, of course. It's these brave men who have fought and died for their countries. No one questions if masculinity is toxic in the aftermath of a natural disaster when men show up to search for bodies in rubble, to rebuild broken communities. We've spent the past few decades asking, what is a woman? But nobody asks, what is a man? That's because, in many ways, everybody already knows the answer, even if liberals and leftists pretend not to. A man, a real man, a good man, is always the same since the time of monkeys. He's simple but ancient. And beyond this, it's hard to describe what it means to be a man, but you understand masculinity when you hear him say, no. We're going to talk about this and so much more tonight. I want to hear all of your thoughts about masculinity. I realize it's a very broad topic, but I really do want to know, what is a man? There's so much competing information, and a lot of this is playing out in our politics right now, this kind of war of the sexes. Tonight's guest is Adam Coleman, author of Black Victim to Black Victor and The Children We Left Behind. He has bylines in the New York Post, Newsweek, The Telegraph, and the Daily Mail. He founded Wrong Speak Publishing. The name is a playful and defiant nod at 1984's Wrong Speak, because his mission with Wrong Speak Publishing is to offer a platform for opinions and ideas that question the mainstream narrative. One of those forbidden topics is masculinity. And he's written about it from a ton of different angles. And every time his perspective is so solid. I really love Adam. And before we get to him and to all of you, some quick housekeeping. If you want to be called on, you need to be on Zoom, on camera, and you need to virtually raise your hand by clicking the reactions button. If you aren't on Zoom and want to be a part of our virtual live audience right now or in the future, click the link in the description below, or to get the Zoom link, go to twoway.tv/Bridget Zoom. The Zoom link is the same link every time, our virtual diner, so save it somewhere, bookmark it. This is where we'll be Wednesdays. The voice of God you're hearing is Cousin Maggie.
Hello, everyone.
Some of you may already know her. She's my cousin and co-producer. We make a lot of other stuff together, probably too much, like Dumpster Fire and Walk-Ins Welcome, and all the other content you can find at Phetasy.com. Maggie is monitoring the chat, and if you have something to say and raise your hand, she is going to message you privately to find out what you'd like to talk about. She's going to help make sure we stay on topic, keep things focused. We can't guarantee that we'll get to everyone. We do our best. Don't be offended if she cuts you or me off. Everyone knows my number one rule is don't be a dick. So just be a masculine dick. Enough of a dick to keep things in check, but not too much of a dick. And now, a word from our sponsor, Quest. I'm trying to make my health a priority, and that's why I love Quest. Quest simplifies the medical testing processes significantly, especially if you're dealing with an HMO like I am. There's no more waiting weeks for an appointment to see the doctor and then getting a referral and waiting weeks more for an appointment with the specialist you need to see. Especially with the rates going up and all of the insanity, Quest is the best product. It offers over 150 of the same tests trusted by doctors, including diagnostics for specific ailments like STDs, chronic health conditions like heart, liver, and kidney disease, as well as testing that's almost never covered by health insurance, like if you want to get your fertility tested or your testosterone, guys. Check your prostates. I don't know. Quest, maybe you can't do that. Quest also offers broad packages of tests that go way beyond the standard tests you typically get in an annual medical checkup visit. Concierge medicine and functional medicine doctors charge thousands of dollars for these types of workups, and Quest offers them for the price of a night on the town. Your health and well-being are worth it. Visit questhealth.com and use the discount code REALNovember25 and get 20% off your purchase. That's questhealth.com, code REALNovember25 for 20% off. All right. I'm excited to get to it. We have so much to cover this evening. Where are all the men? My first man up to the plate, Adam Coleman. Welcome.
Oh, we need you to unmute there, Adam.
Oh, he's muted. Oh, and he's gone. He's like, I'm out. I'm out of here.
Sorry, my computer is
Oh, that's all right.
on the other side of the room.
No worries. How are you, Nate?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thank you for being here. This is a topic that is near and dear. This is your wheelhouse, sir. You're a man. You write about masculinity. You write about fatherlessness. A lot of how this leaves men adrift. What is the state of man today? Just overview. You talk to men, you work with men. What's the sense?
You mentioned before mixed messages. I think that's a big problem because they're having trouble figuring out how to interact, especially how to interact with women. There's a large portion. Obviously, we're speaking. This entire conversation is going to be very broad.
Yeah.
So if it doesn't apply, then don't let it fly, as I say. What I would say is there's a lot of lost men who are out there who don't know how to be men. And what I mean by that is they weren't trained to be men by other men. As a man, you're supposed to be guided by other men. You hear people say women can't raise a man. What they mean is women can't teach us how to be healthy, adequate men in its fullness, right? They can only give a perspective from a woman how they think that a man should act, and if he's able to accomplish that. But you don't learn how to become a mechanic from a chef. I think it's incredibly important for men to get that guidance from their fathers. And unfortunately, children like myself don't have a father that's in the home Or, and I think this is another really big issue, they have fathers who technically live in the home but work 60 hours a week. Or when they come home, they just watch TV and go to sleep. They're present but absent fathers, and
Mhm.
they never
Mhm.
teach their boys anything. They never teach their boys how to be confident. And actually, to kind of answer the broader question, what is a man? Um, the essence of a man is someone who is confident, because all those things that we talk about, protecting women, saying no to someone, is basically establishing boundaries. This is unacceptable. You cannot do that if you have no confidence. Like,
Mm.
that is why weak men get ran over, because they refuse and they're too scared to say, no, I will not tolerate this. And they become pushovers. And then they marry aggressive women who push them over. Then their kids don't respect them, right? So it just creates this entire thing. They go to work, no one respects them, right? They speak down to them and they never defend themselves. So the essence of being a man, it's like the glue that keeps everything together, is to be
Mm.
confident. And part of the reason I say this is because I grew up for many years. My biggest struggle was confidence. Um, and when you're a little kid and you mess up, you want someone to say, "Hey, it's okay. Get back at it. Get back out there." Especially as a young man, and your father telling you that. If you have your first breakup, you don't want to think that something is wrong with you. That's why she broke up with you. You want someone to say, "Hey, man, it happens to us all, right? It's okay. You're not broken. It's all right." You
Yeah.
need that. And I learned a lot from what I was missing by raising my son, and
Mm.
saw how me being there and me being prepared for when he entered his teenage years, and teaching him things and pulling him to the side, and we talk about these things and I share with him stories so he understands he's not alone. When he does a good job, tell him, great job. If he messes up, it's all right, man. Just keep going at it. You got this. I believe in you. That that is like a massive boost to a child, a young boy. And so when now my son is 20, so when he's out in the world, he has that confidence. So when we talk, he's not speaking, with being unsure if he should do this. It's, I want to do this. I'm
Right.
going to do this, right? And he always can come to me to ask questions and things of that nature, to reinstall that confidence if it drops a little bit. But he has a healthy amount of confidence while also being a polite man. There's a difference between being a nice guy and a polite man. And he's a polite man. He's a polite young man.
Yeah. I think it's something that's so interesting too that I've noticed and especially around the last election and past decade or so, part of the thing that I think pushed suburban moms right in particular, in 2024, not this recent uh, knockoff election or whatever. The thing that pushed them that way was that they're raising boys. So it's very challenging to raise men in a society that's also demonizing men. And people
Right.
think, oh, this is just men getting mad about this. People will say, oh, these men, they're crying because they're being demonized or whatever, like toxic masculinity. But you have an entire generation who is grappling with how to raise men also in this environment and felt like it was not fair to their own children in ways that they sometimes couldn't even articulate. So it
Yeah.
wasn't just dads and boys who were feeling this pressure, but also it's not like women are just raising women out there. They have sons.
Right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. The thing that comes to mind is when you have a strong father figure, they teach you to do the thing that is right, regardless if everyone around you tells you that it's wrong. And what I see is people who are reacting too strongly to the culture, because we can
Mm.
all look around and see that the culture is filled with poison. And it's not about, well, how do you fit into the poisonous environment? It's how do you steamroll that
Mm.
environment? How do you keep persevering and going through it? and not changing who you are, because who you are is correct. If you know within your core that you're a righteous man, you're doing the right thing, you were raised appropriately, then why are you changing who you are? Why should you shift with the wind of the moment because there's some commercial that says men are toxic,
Yeah.
or or because there's hypothetically some HR manager who is out to get you or something like that? No, real men stick up for themselves and go through evil all the time.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you're dealing with evil, you'll get burned. But you know what? You'll heal and you'll keep moving through. So I
Yeah.
do think I understand where people are coming from. Like, how do you raise boys in an environment that tacitly appears hostile by messaging? Well, it's the same way you raise boys 50 years ago, 100
Right.
years ago. You tell them to do the right thing, to be strong, and to not bend over to the will of evil people.
Yeah, the politics too is weird because it's taken over everything and it's entertainment now, but it always does feel like everybody's a bit looking for a daddy figure in politics,
Mm.
you know? I see especially like on the fringes, there does feel like there was like this weird stuff with the Obamas where it would be like, come back, mom and dad. And I was like, this is strange, weird way to relate to politicians. I don't think that they, like him, Daddy Trump, like protect us, Daddy Trump. He's the like dad that's gonna protect us from all the mean mainstream media bullies. Like all of these dynamics are so fascinating to me because they're always playing out.
Yeah.
These dynamics are they're such archetypes and they're always playing out in all of our interactions and even if it doesn't appear that way, it's still there, layered. But I do think part of what we're seeing now is this intense reaction to men being demonized. And like you said, they're kind of overreacting because if you don't have that central core or you don't have the thing that keeps running through my mind lately is the culture is quicksand. And I
Yeah.
love that you said just steamroll it because it does feel like there's nothing is really stable and you'll take a step and get stuck and you're getting gobbled up by it.
Mhm.
And I love the idea that you have to be able to kind of quickly move across it and know who you are. But if you don't have that, it's easy to become very reactive. I see these younger men, particularly, again, we can talk about this just from the perspective of what we're seeing politically, women becoming extremely more and more left under 40 in particular, and young men breaking right in Trump's case for the first time in decades in numbers that we haven't seen. And they feel like they're being attacked. But then you go so far, you get into misandry and misogyny, it becomes like a hatred
Right.
of men or a hatred of women. And how do you grapple with that when it starts to kind of infect the whole culture?
It's interesting because I have a feeling this is just a general theory. It's not every single person. But the people that we, let's say the feminists who wear multicolored hair, screaming, septum piercings and all that, who claim to be feminists, and they have a strong hatred towards men. What I often find is that it's not in a vacuum. Like it's not for zero reason. There's a they're usually victims of something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, so, unfortunately, and I wish more men acknowledge this. I have a lot of female friends, and you have conversations. You learn like how common this is, but many of them are victims of molestation when they were
Yeah.
children, rape,
Yeah.
all different types of
Men
physical
too.
abuse. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But here's the difference: is this for a woman who has been violated, she is the weaker sex in that
Mm.
scenario. And so for her, she needs an explanation as to why that happened to her. Just like any victim, they want to try to heal, and they always go to, why did this happen to me? Why was I victimized? And the bad part, extremely bad part of I would say like a misandrous portion of feminism is that they say it's not just that person, it's all men. This
Yeah.
is their nature.
Yeah.
And it becomes a purpose for them. It becomes a reason for them because they've been asking themselves, why did this happen to me? Oh, here's the answer. It's because that's just what men do. And then they build this fear and animosity towards the opposite sex. So that's on the female side when it comes to feminism. But I also ask the same question when it comes to these young men. How come some of them go to the extreme of actually being misogynist, right? And I don't use that word lightly. I don't throw it around left or right, but it's a strong animosity. They're quick to say, women just use you, they take all your stuff, right? And what I often find is when people speak, especially with like strong declaration, it's often about them, right? It's not about the issue that they're talking about, because they'll say like, yeah, don't date women because they'll use you, they'll sleep with your friend, and they won't return your motorcycle. And it's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. This sounds very specific, man. I think you're dealing with something, and you're projecting it on the rest of the audience.
Yeah.
And if I can give you like a quick example,
Of course.
I'll call him a YouTuber. There's a YouTuber who is all about men going their own way, being monk, don't have sex with women, don't interact with women, just, escape from the society, right? And as time will go on, I'm a consumer of all different types of content. As time will go on, you find out that he was married a couple times. And then you listen, and then one of the times he explains, well, one of my wives was a stripper. And I'm like,
You're like,
wait a minute, man. Like, you married the most high-risk person for marriage. Like, why would you do that? And so because that was a poor decision on your part, and it's not to say like strippers are bad people, but like we all do like a risk analysis, right? If you date a guy who just got out of jail, that's a high risk that this is not going to work out. So you dated a high-risk individual. It didn't work out. Shocked, she cheated on you. And then you say, swear off all women because they're all bad. This is a person who has not healed. And it's not right that she did that. So I'm not excusing her behavior. But we also have to be accountable for our choices, right? You pick this individual. You decide to put a ring on her finger and marry her, right? So you're also equally responsible for your choices, even if they're bad choices.
Yeah.
And that's the part of manhood I think is being lost when you have these guys out here feeding them nihilism about the opposite sex. Meanwhile, and on top of that, they say women are never accountable, but this person is never accountable for his mistakes.
Yeah.
Because he willingly made this choice to marry this type of person, and he is shocked that he got burned. So I think it's really important about the advice that we get from certain people who have not healed. You don't take advice from people who are unwell.
So much of the stuff too that I look around and I don't want what a lot of these people are offering. So it might be, and I do think like some of it is some of the stuff is like edgelording, which is just men acting out, and because they're not driving around breaking mailboxes like they did in Dazed and Confused and like we did in the 90s when you would like randomly vandalize an abandoned house because you could in the woods or whatever. This is like that kind of drive-by mailbox smashing. This is my gut instinct about it. I don't know that it's true, but it does seem like this kind of online vandalism, that instinct that you have when you're like a teen to like go you're crazy, you know? It's funny how much you forget what it's like to be a teen when you get older. And then you're like, oh God, it's just your brain is being bathed in hormones. You're out of your freaking mind. You're at the peak of like all of these things are peaking. And if you're not going outside, interacting with one another and interacting with the world, you're going to take that out online, and it's even easier to turn people into caricatures. So one woman who did something to you, maybe in real life, maybe online, you got catfish, all women become that thing. Same thing with women versus men. It's it becomes this big problem that then of course algorithms also exacerbate. And so these younger kids, you know, and I know we have some hands and I want to hear from people, I'm sure. Does anyone have a kid that raised their hand that wants to talk about it? Or
Yes.
I want to hear from, actually, can we bring in some of our people to talk? Adam?
Yeah,
Are you
absolutely.
good with talking to the
Yeah.
peoples? Okay, well, we'll pop in and out. I want to hear from somebody who has kids and experiences this, or who is it?
I'm going to bring up John Mark first. He had some good topics, and then we can go to kids.
Yeah, we'll just roll with it.
Okay.
We're rolling with it, Adam.
All right. There we go.
All right. Good afternoon, Bridget, Adam.
Oh, it's radio voice.
That's radio face. That's right. Thanks for having me on again. And
You're
I do
always
have a
Radio
son.
welcome.
voice, not radio face, just so we're clear.
Well, my dad used to say. But yeah, I also have a son, so this is a pretty important topic to me. I have a son and a daughter. My son's a junior high. And what I wanted to say has to do with where I first started to hear the conversation around toxic masculinity. And if I recall correctly, it kind of came out of the, well, I always called it the Pound Me Too movement, because that's not a hashtag, that's a pound sign. That's a terrible, terrible name to call it, but still pretty funny. Pound Me
That
Too.
did always
What?
crack me up.
So I saw it kind of fall off from the hashtag Me Too movement. And it started this conversation of like, well, you know, we have the Andrew Tates of the world, we have the Harvey Weinsteins of the world. I would agree that that is toxic masculinity. That's somebody using their position of power and their manliness to subjugate women and what have you. But the problem, I think, became that toxic masculinity as a term never became clearly defined. So it became this umbrella term for whatever somebody didn't like that a guy was doing. It could be anything from sitting with your legs open on the subway to, you know, being outright misogynistic. And because it was never clearly defined, right, things like that started to get people talking about it and get attention. And where I saw most of these conversations happen was online, right? The new town square. And the algorithm, as we know, has an enrage to engage model. So I really think there was an element of these fringe ideas that weren't necessarily held by everybody that were getting more and more traction, more and more airtime, so to say, that had us start to believe, as Dave Chappelle would have said, that the extremes are the norm, right? And with that, around the same time, you know, if we're talking 2010, 2012, that's when I started to also see more conversations happen around non-binaryism, gender confusion, right? This disassociation with anything to do with gender identity. So I wonder and I'll make a point here in just a second that also ties into my son. I wonder how much of this, you know, this cultural shift towards an online spaces referring to these elements that we've traditionally associated with masculinity as now being a toxic trait, right? Because it was fine when we were talking about, you know, sexual assault or misogyny or things like that. But then we start saying, oh, well, going to the gym or,
Right.
you know,
Eating red meat.
hunting, you
Yeah.
know, all these things that we valued as a species for thousands of years, all of a sudden are toxic, right? And you have a young kid developing in school where, you know, the majority of teachers are, and I'm dating a teacher. My ex-wife is working to be a teacher. I know I have a lot of teachers in my periphery. They all have great intentions, and summer's off. But those good intentions, you know, the road to hell is paved with that. So I can see how this can start to spiral where you've got a kid who's like, oh, well, I don't really identify with being a boy. I don't these masculine traits of playing sports and roughhousing and this and that. I don't really feel that way. And I can see how that, well, maybe you are non-binary. I could see how that trying to help the child slips in, right? But I wonder if elements of, gender identity and young people moving towards non-binary identities, or even in some cases transgenderism, tie into the way we've had discussions around traits of being a traditional male as being toxic.
Yeah, there was a whole giant portion of my monologue that I cut that addressed this, and I was it got because it just felt like too political, and it's definitely part of this conversation, but I think actually the root cause of much of this is, and Mary Harrington talks about this all the time, and we should have her on this show actually to talk specifically about how disembodied we all are, particularly the younger generation. As we're saying, they're online, they're interacting online. It's normal for them to be in discords, be on chats, this is where their friends are. Their friends are all hanging out on video games and whatever. And you start to feel a little bit just like a brain in a jar. I mean, I spend an enormous time in front of a screen or online, and I have to go put my feet in the grass, touch dirt with my hands. And it does leave you feeling kind of scattered and a little bit crazy. And I'm an adult who didn't have my young brain bathed in this. So
Right.
I can't imagine how disembodied you would feel as someone young. And I do think that leads to like, well, what does it even matter? Are you even human? Like it doesn't even matter what gender you are. It
Right.
would definitely open itself up to that. Has it been challenging for you to how is your son handling it? If you're comfortable talking about,
absolutely. He's just started junior high this year. I and his mother and I we were both on good terms despite being divorced. We're very intentional with what they're allowed to do online, both of our kids, and what access we give them and to what, right? So there was a free-for-all a decade ago before people realized how dangerous social media was as a tool.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting, and I refer to it as a tool because it is the most powerful tool that mankind has ever created. Communication is what elevated our species.
Yeah.
And being able to communicate with anybody in near real time, instantaneously from your pocket, that's an insanely powerful tool.
Yeah.
But as it's in its infancy, so is our knowledge of how to use it. But with my son, we have a lot of conversations. So years ago, it would have been called Asperger's, but he has a high functioning form of autism. And it's interesting to note that I saw a researcher talk about kids who are neurodivergent being younger, more likely to be non-binary, because in their very logical oriented brain, like, well, I don't fit column A, I don't fit column B, I must be something in between, right? I'm neither, right? But these conversations with him regarding masculinity, right? It's all about intent, right? I talk a lot about intentionality with him. And I also talk about, what defines your character as a person. And it is how you treat the people that are less strong than you, that are less fast, that are less smart, that are less good at something, right? If you're in a position elevated of them, it is how you deal with those people that are not at your level, right? Do you show them compassion, kindness, and help? Or you belittle and hold them down, push them down? And it's interesting because I have that same conversation with my daughter, because it doesn't necessarily just tie into masculinity, but I think it's a very important conversation to have with a young boy because masculinity itself is seemingly under attack.
Yeah, I love that. Adam, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So first thing I want to say, I can't see your name because my computer screen's too far away to reach it. But I want to commend you for one, having the conversation with your son. While everyone is looking for the solution in schools or public policy and things like that, in my opinion, the best way to prevent your child from being indoctrinated from an illogical ideology is to talk to them. In the same way that we had stranger danger to warn kids that not every person who comes up to you and offers you something is a good person. it's not to scare them, it's to make them aware of the world around them. And so parents have to arm themselves with information and say, hey, if your teacher ever brings this thing up, let me know, right? And if they try to tell you this, that's a lie. You need to tell me what's going on, like depending on which age they're at. And
Sure.
I've had these conversations with my son when he was a teen, and he's let me know about his feminist teacher who's trying to, implant certain things, and I would make complaints. Or the consultants who came in and want to ask kids about their sexuality, and they didn't tell us that anyone was coming in to talk to our children about any of this stuff. So it's really important that parents actually have this dialogue. Even if it appears uncomfortable, you need to actually tell them that there is a pervasive ideology that is out here that is attempting to confuse you. And in my opinion, it's an evil ideology that tells you that who you are, the way that God made you is incorrect. And so I think I want to just commend you for actually having the conversations with your son. I think that when it comes to masculinity and toxic masculinity, what we're actually talking about is antisocial behavior,
Yes.
right? The men
concur.
who are
Right,
sexually
right,
assaulting
right.
people and things
Yep.
of that nature, it's antisocial behavior. The women who are doing things that are unbecoming and things of that nature, it's antisocial behavior,
Yeah.
right? And
That's a good
so
point.
I think that unfortunately the term toxic masculinity is in the lexicon. So now this is how we refer to things.
Right.
But I don't like the attachment to masculinity because it's not the masculinity, it's the behavior,
Right.
Right.
right?
Right.
So there's not different forms of masculinity, right? Matter of fact, as we started this off, masculinity is incredibly broad, right? And it's in some ways it's subjective, right? Someone may agree with me and disagree with me on my views on it, but we all kind of come around to the same point of agreement. But if you're a young man who, likes to dance, then that doesn't mean you're a girl.
Right.
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 Like there's a clear spectrum when it comes to how to be an appropriate man, right? But there are core qualities. Everyone's looking at the surface, right? Well, you're not wearing this, or you don't talk this way, or you don't walk the right way. But what are the core elements of it? It's all beneath the skin, right? It is all in our conduct and our character. And so that's why I say we're focusing on the wrong thing when criticizing men and women by looking at femininity and masculinity. We really need to be talking about personality traits and the behavior that these people are exhibiting.
Yeah.
I
Thank you so
wholeheartedly
much.
agree. Yeah.
Thank you.
Somebody
Thanks, John
wise said
Mark.
something about judging people by the content of the character, right?
Someone said that.
Someone said that.
All right. Thanks, John Mark.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
you.
Good to see you.
All right. Next, I'm going to bring up Philip.
Hi, Philip.
You do that. There we go.
Philip
Hey,
looks like he's
Bridget.
beamed in.
And Maggie, you picked quite a topic to try and tackle in 1 hour,
I
but
mean, these are all things that we're gonna return to, but I know everyone's like, can we focus this a little? I'm like, no, because it's something that means so many things to people. I think it's good to kind of keep it broad and catch, well, like, it's fun improv exercise.
so my parents were divorced, and I learned a lot of what it means to be a man and what that, my take on it from my maternal grandfather, actually, who was a civil engineer who worked on the Manhattan Project and, had his tools, and he was the stereotypical man, and took me to the gym, taught me how to work out when I was going into middle school, and helped me get on the football team, kind of all the stereotypical stuff. My dad was an architect who discovered he was gay when I was about 10 years old. So I had lots of interesting interactions with people from all kinds of different communities. And they were all great. I mean, I just exposed to a lot of different kinds of people. But I think maternal grandfather, football coach, scoutmaster. There's lots of good male role models for folks to call upon, even in homes where the father's not present.
Yeah.
The other thing is, in our case, like I've been married to my wife for 38 years. You know, we have 2 kids, a son and a daughter. And it was an interesting dynamic because I'm a little bit more traditional. My wife is a rabid feminist. And when I would try and lay down the law with my son and establish boundaries and get him to do his homework instead of playing video games, she was always the one to let him get away with stuff. But he was interesting because he always tried to impress me. He always
Yeah.
he joined the wrestling team, broke his neck. He tried to play football, was third string, but he always tried. But a category of men doesn't serve the purpose of figuring this out because there's a wide distribution. And even though his intention was to be kind of a typical, athlete male, he ended up being an actor and a singer and a electronic dance music producer. He's almost
Yeah.
40 now, um, but just people have their own destinies, I guess. And
Yeah.
even though he was motivated to try and be more typically masculine and male, he ended up being, very artistic uh, and successful, but just not in the kind of typical way. But I think what I learned about being a man is, my maternal grandfather always said, "You're only as good as your word."
Yeah.
So I think that's the fundamental thing is a man keeps his promises,
I
even
love
after 38 years of being married to a rabid feminist.
that.
Would she appreciate you calling her that, Philip?
Yes, she would proudly stand up and say, "That is me."
After 38 years, I'm sure she knows.
All right. Thank you, Philip.
Thank you so
Sure.
much, Philip.
Thank you.
All right. Next, I'm going to bring up Deborah.
I love hearing from everyone.
Uh-huh.
Hi
You have the
there.
nicest audience.
Oh, there I am. Hi.
Hello.
Adam, I
How
love
you
your
doing?
work. I was so excited to see you were the guest. I don't have kids, but I've been very concerned about watching youth and the fears both sides have of each other. People either are just becoming sort of like incels or femcells or going to porn or OnlyFans, like these extremes.
Yeah.
And what I really wonder about, Adam, I'm thinking about sons, and I'm thinking about how women have shamed men on some level for having like a lot of sexual energy and like, oh, they're so disgusting. And like, what is the way to honor young men that is actually like life force, that is like generative, that is this positive thing that they have, and yet to help them like to channel it or something like that in a way that ends up promoting having good relations with women. I don't know. I don't know how that can be done. What can a father do? Women have their end of it about how they need to be responsible, but what can
Yeah.
he do for their sons?
Well, I think, all right, so there's a couple things that come to mind. One, purpose is incredibly important to men. We need a purpose. We need something to focus on. In many ways, we are our work, whether that some people agree with that, some people don't. Some people take it to the extreme. When I'm saying these things, I mean it in a healthy balance. But you need, as a man, you need something that helps. You need something to focus on because otherwise, right or wrong, in many ways, you feel like you're worthless. Like you're not contributing anything, you're not helping anyone, right? So it's incredibly important that we have something to focus on that gives us some sort of purpose. The other part is, while yes, I've been a teenage boy, your hormones are going wherever. However, the difference is that I think young men who are insecure put their value into sex and put their value into women, as in like conquering women, right? So the Playboy types, they are quick to disassociate from each woman that they have a sexual encounter with. And sometimes people are like, well, that's just guys, guys like variety and so on and so forth, which is sort of true. But once again, we're talking about behavior, right? It's okay to be a very sexual person. You can be married in a very sexual person, but you're doing it in a healthy way with one particular person, right? But if you're being reckless and you're spreading your seed all over the place, right? All because doing that act makes you feel of value, then you're not behaving in an appropriate way and you're putting everything on the external. So more often than not, when I see what we call hypersexuality, I'm seeing men who have put all of their value into whether they can conquer a woman or not. And that's not that's not healthy. Two, it's dangerous in a variety of ways that we can go on an hour talking about. But it's not fulfilling. It's like a drug. In many ways, it affects the same parts of the brain, right? You get a high, you wake up afterwards, after you finished, and you're like, I'm gonna get the hell out of here. You hit the lows, and you need to replenish that high with another conquering. And it's that piece over and over and over. And I've seen where guys do this even in relationships, and it becomes their downfall where they're putting all their value into this partner, and then they sacrifice being a man just so that they can stay with this person, even if they're unhealthy. So I think it's very important to not mix up healthy sexual urges that young men have, which we can in many ways curb. We can distract ourselves in some ways, or we can channel it in a very healthy way with one particular woman, right? Or if you don't want a relationship, just don't sleep with 10 women in a month. Just like there are ways that you can be a guy who is single, who is going towards something. I do think it's important if you're going to be a single guy to go towards something. Don't waste people's time. And I do think that men are much better together with women in the long term. So marriage should ultimately be your North Star as a man, as a young man. How you get there is a different story, but I think that should be the North Star. And that's how you can keep that sexual energy channeled in an appropriate way.
Great, thank you.
I love too what Charlie Kirk said. That you talked about purpose and his thing that went viral, the get married, have children, build a legacy, pass down your values, pursue the eternal, seek true joy. And one of the problems with youth truly is wasted on the young. You can't know what you don't know. So
Yes.
People don't know the compounding benefits of marriage, for example. And it is one of those things that compounds over time, or the joy that you get from, you might think that it's like marriage, oh, these jokes and old bags, but like the freedom that my husband and I have to roast each other or fart or like whatever, just that kind of like true intimacy. That is true intimacy. That is truly some of the funniest stuff. And then the joy, I talk to women about this all the time because I never would have known. And I knew having children was a good thing. I was never, I wasn't like, don't have kids. I didn't think it was for me. But having gotten very lucky and having a child, I tell my friends, I'm like, you can't know what you don't know, but do not chase like your comedy dream and give up this. People just, I do worry that young people just don't know that, which is why I do think it's important to have these conversations and actually have people modeling. This is what I liked about Jordan Peterson and his wife when they would go on tour. They were modeling a healthy, loving relationship for people, because I don't know where, if you don't have that in your life and you're just online consuming a lot of media, I don't know where you actually even see that.
if I can say, you're making a good point as far as modeling, because the reason I always talk about families is because it's the first modeling that a child has, right? The parents are a child's world, and the father who was up here before, who said, "My son was always trying to impress me," right? And it's because you're his idol,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
For the most important parent to a child is the same-sex parent, right? Is because they're trying to mimic you. I've had people say that your son is literally watching you and he's mimicking you. My son has very similar mannerisms to
Yeah.
me, right? And it's weird when we get together and we do the same mannerisms and I don't even notice it. Other people see it, right? Because my son is looking at me as an example of how to be a man, even if he's not aware that that's what he is doing. So many of the things that we're talking about, like we need to have more conversations. The reason we're having more conversations is because there is a lack of a model for many of people. So when I talk about family separation, this isn't a new phenomenon. I can go back even in my family, two, three generations of some form of family separation where the kids are lost. I have an uncle to the day my grandfather died was still trying to get in his father's life.
Mm.
And this is a real thing, and these people are feel lost, and then we wonder why so many people are getting addicted to drugs, why so many people are chasing a short-term high. They're lost, and for many of these people who are saying who have doubt over having children, well, if you talk to them, and or I should say, if you listen to them, because many of them will tell you, they'll say, well, getting married produces hurt for a kid. I don't want to bring a child into an environment where the parents are going to fight. And once again, people talk and give examples, not realizing that they're just talking about themselves. They're
Yeah.
talking about what they saw as kids. So it's hard to tell. And while I agree, Charlie Kirk's sentiment, I agree with that. But I think what a lot of conservatives miss is that you're taking what you had as a kid for granted. You
Right.
think everyone had that. Well, of course you get married, have lots of kids, and you have a wife and a husband, and you buy a house because that's what they saw
Right.
every single day. Online, we're dealing with people who did not see that.
Yeah.
So it's like telling a kid in the hood, hey, you can be an astronaut, and he's looking at you like you're crazy. I've
Right.
never seen an astronaut. I have no idea how to become an astronaut. And then we're saying, well, you can become an astronaut, have a good day, and you just walk away. Like we
This,
have to give instruction. We have to model these things so people
yeah.
understand how to do it.
This is one of the, we should do like a whole episode on what woke things did you, because I think a lot of the seeds of woke are very well intentioned and are actually true. And
Mhm.
one of them is representation does matter. Like, see, because it's not like everybody needs to be represented in every form of media, but seeing an astronaut to somebody, it's just modeling. That's
Modeling.
all it
Yeah.
is. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's and again, it's just a misuse of a term or a misuse of an idea. It's like, well, yeah, having other models for people is important so that they can see that they too can be a Disney princess or whatever.
All right, we've got
Exactly.
one more hand after
Thank
that.
you so much. I
Thank
do
you.
want to
Thank
say
you.
too, just thinking about the sex thing, it's very funny how quickly, because I'm old enough to remember like all the conservatives shaming everybody for having sex out of wedlock and like all these heathens having sex. And then now, because the birth rate is collapsing, they're like, can everyone start having sex, please? We need more babies. It was like in one generation.
All right, thank you, Deborah. All right, and I'm going to bring up Micah.
Micah.
There you go.
The pronunciation is flawless.
All right,
Um,
remember.
Hi, Adam, a fellow New Jerseyan. Very sad for both of
Hey.
us. Um, this is a great topic. I have to keep my thoughts kind of organized. But I think about kind of all the mixed messages that men get, um, and not cut so much slack. So like, and I don't even know where the messages come from in a sense. They just kind of are imprinted on people. I grew up in the 90s, and being gay was like the worst thing ever. You know, everybody was like is afraid of being gay. I always like to comment on how attractive other men are because I think it's funny how it makes other men squirm. And it's like the forbidden thing to do. And it's just funny because people obviously understand when another man is attractive, but they can't say it or they'll feel like they're gay, which growing up in the 90s was the worst thing in the world. And there was just a lot of confusing messaging around like man up, and then people grow up and their girlfriends and wives want them to be vulnerable. And it's a very hard thing to square. It's kind of like you gotta be a man, don't cry, but
But do
also
they
show your feelings.
but do they want them to be vulnerable? I mean, there was this really interesting Instagram that Dr. Pewter was telling me to watch actually in preparation for this. And it was fascinating reading the comments. And it was essentially this woman doing this act out, and she was dressed up like a construction worker, and it was a woman, and then she was playing the wife as well. And she was like, "Honey, open up and tell me your feelings." And he's like, "I don't know." And then she's like, "No, I mean it. I really want to hear about your, what's going on? What's going on with you?" And then she says, "Well, it was like back in when my pet tortoise died." And then in her brain, she's like, he's so weak. Ew, gross. Like he's so gay. Oh my gosh, he is gay. And all the that was funny, whatever, and in like a very Instagram basic way. But the comments were all like, "It's true. This happened to me." It was crazy reading the comments, just men sharing their experience of this. And so I think that is fascinating because I'm not sure that women are sure how they feel about it.
Yeah, I've
Even
heard
when
that
I
from
was
a
writing for
therapist.
Playboy, I think I wrote a piece that was like, "When men cry, I don't feel safe."
That's great. Yeah, I heard that from a therapist that she was saying how women often in sessions are asking a man to open up, and then he does, and they don't particularly like what they hear. So it doesn't work out so well. So yes, it definitely depends on the situation, but men are definitely in a bind.
Yeah,
To this day, I really don't cry like almost never, basically, because it's so ingrained in me that that's like just not a manly thing to do. And as an adult, I was like, I think an older mentor said to me, like, it's good to cry. It's like, all right. I was like, men don't cry. What are you talking about? I'm not a baby. Um, so I don't know how to escape that. And then there's kind of the overcorrection. I come from a
yeah.
very odd family. My father's a kindergarten teacher to this day, which I get different reactions. Some people naturally assume he's a pedophile. Other people think it's sweet. He is very sweet, also very feminine. So he wasn't like a very masculine role model. I texted my sister recently, and I was saying that when kind of I'm feeling down, I'll watch like these movies with a very strong male lead, Indiana Jones, a lot of things like that. And she's very lefty, so she was like, "Oh, okay, maybe you should like think about the gender spectrum and things." I was like, I don't think that's what I was going for.
That's
Um,
funny.
yeah, so it's a bit of an overcorrection, and it just feels it's just like everyone's missing the boat. So yeah.
I think actually, and Maggie's gonna laugh when I admit this again because I've been obsessively talking about it all week. But I think the thing that inspired this topic is that I've been watching Mad Men for the very first time.
Yeah.
I
That's a
never
90s
watched it.
man. Oh yeah.
And now I'm
Earlier,
like,
yeah.
yeah, it is funny. I was like, how did this even get made? And then I realized it was made in 2007. So, and everyone's like, don't worry, this stuff starts to creep in the later seasons. Because I was like, wow, they really just went for it, huh? I'm surprised this ever even got made in Hollywood. But it did make me think like, one of the things that drives me crazy is that even in again one generation, my generation, they're so much more involved than the fathers were, our fathers, like our parents who were born in the 40s and 50s or whatever. From my experience, like my cousins, my siblings, the dads are just as in my house, and the dads are just as engaged in the childcare, the how domestic duties. It it was very much like my dad came home from work, he watched the news, we were all quiet because he was stressed out from, before they got divorced. And so and my mom did all the house stuff and took care of the kids. It was very separate division of labor. And most people I know now, because you can't live off like a single income, the men and the women are working. And this is another thing that drives me crazy in conservative media. I'm like, do you guys know normal people? Like, at all? The people, the pundits, most everyone I know, it's a very seamless flow of two people who are working. And if the mother does have the ability to stay at home, it's not like the father's not doing anything. I just feel like that's changed so much in a generation. The men are so much more involved with their kids. When I go drop off my kid at preschool, it's more often than not more men dropping the kids off than women, at least 50-50. That was not the case a generation ago.
That's true. That's a great improvement.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I can say, because you mentioned the crying part, I will say that for many reasons, I was very much so like emotionally stunted. I kept everything in. So I didn't, when I was younger, at least I don't remember like crying very often. If I did, I cried in shame alone in my room or something like
Like
that.
a man. Yeah.
Like a man.
And I'm like, that's how a man should cry.
But
Just kidding.
that all changed after my son was born. I remember watching the movie Pay It Forward with Haley Joel Osment. I don't know if you remember that movie. And I remember watching it and it came to the end and I was like, why the hell am I crying? And it's been like that ever since. I can't watch anything where anyone is crying because I start crying.
Yeah.
And then I found out that there's actually a reason for that. Men lower in testosterone when they start raising their children, and they increase in estrogen. And so we become softer because we're dealing with babies, right? We become a little bit less aggressive because of that. We become more sensitive to these things. And especially the first 11 months of my son's life, I was watching him all day. So I was feeding him. I was doing everything, and I was working overnight. I was getting very little sleep, but it was like the best time because I got to watch my son grow in front of me. And Bridget, you see it, like it happens really quick.
So fast. I hate it. I mean, it's like you love it because they become just cooler and cooler, but you also are just like, no, it's slipping all away. And they're so funny. Like the toddler age the other day, I was like, why are you coming? I'm like, can you stay in your bed? Because she's been coming in the bed in the middle of the night. And just like that 3.5, everyone's like, oh, she's 3.5. It's sleep regression, whatever. And then I'm like, why do you come in? And she's like, because I'm a toddler. I'm like, all right, fair enough. Like I can't really argue with that.
Yeah.
I get it.
So, the crying thing, as far as relationships go, like my wife has seen me cry, but it's usually after some sort of event. I think there's a big difference between crying at the mildest thing for no reason. It's like, oh, my boss is really mean, and you just start crying. It's like, oh, you sound like a little bitch. But just like get it together. But like, if a relative of mine dies, like, of course, like it's perfectly reasonable that you're crying. So I do think that there's a balance when it comes to showing your emotions to women. And I tell my wife all the time that you think you want these things, but you really don't. And we've gone through a whole list of things. She's like, why don't you do this? I was like, you really don't want that. And then she was like, I do want it. Like, I think it was something like, why aren't you excited? Like, Bridget, you've probably done this to your husband. You're like, oh, I just found this deal on this thing, and I'm looking at her like, you're not the shopper, okay? But you can imagine like my wife coming to, I found this thing. This is amazing, so cute, and I'm just looking at her like, yeah, I'm sure. And she's like, oh, you're not as excited as I was like, you don't want me to be.
Yeah.
And then one day I was like, oh my God, you found a really good deal. And she was like, ew. was like, see, I told you.
Like, show me the prints. She's
Yeah.
like, never mind.
Never
No,
mind.
it's true. You don't. Yeah, that is true. It is funny. Like, you think you want those things and you really don't.
You really don't.
Yeah, it's all so fascinating to me. This has been amazing. Thank you. Good to see you again.
Thank you, Micah.
Thank you, Micah.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
Adam,
you.
where can we find you and your work and promote away anything you want?
Well, you can find me on X at wrong_speak. Definitely subscribe to my Substack, adambcoleman.substack.com. I kind of use it like a fan page where I put out the appearances that I do. I write for the New York Post. I actually have something it's probably live now. It just came out tonight in response to the New Jersey election. So I'm a frequent contributor to the New York Post. I have been for 3.5 years or 4 years, I forget.
Okay.
And I have a YouTube channel. I'm starting to get more into short documentaries. And I have one specifically about love, because there's not enough content that's out there that is positive about love. So I did a short documentary about a travel love story with my wife where we bounced around Europe, but we did it like an interview style, talking about how we met and how travel has been an important part of our relationship and how much we love each other.
I love that. I'm gonna have to watch
Yeah.
that. And I
Good.
love traveling. I can't wait to like take the child everywhere.
Yeah.
Well, where are you on social?
He said that.
No, he did.
Yeah.
Sorry, I missed that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't say it to my YouTube. It's at wrong_speak.
Okay,
on-
thank you.
On
I knew
YouTube.
we were
Yeah.
missing something. All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being our guest. It went so fast. I appreciate your perspective and you and having you in the quicksand that is our culture. I appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate you inviting me.
Thank you.
Have a good night. All right.
Right.
Let's wrap it out. You guys are the best. Thank you so much for being here. And I'm just waiting for
The words.
The words.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you to my guest, Adam Coleman. Thank you to those of you who showed up and asked questions and contributed and shared from your heart. And maybe someone will cry sometime. Thank you to Two Way and their amazing team. Thank you, Quest, for sponsoring this show. Visit questhealth.com and use the discount code REALNovember25 and get 20% off your purchase. That is questhealth.com, code REALNovember25 for 20% off. There's a link in the description below. Thank you, Maggie. And
Thank you, Bridget.
thank you all for being here so much. Join us next Wednesday, November 12th at 7 p.m. Eastern. If you're with us on the Zoom, it's the same link every time, so bookmark this. Thank you guys for getting real with me. I'm Bridget Phetasy. Don't forget to tip your server.